Please, honey, Grandma really needs you. My mother's voice crackled through the phone, thick with what I now recognize as feigned concern. I sat in my Indianapolis apartment, surrounded by neatly packed luggage for our long-anticipated family cruise. Excitement drained from me, replaced by an uneasy knot in my stomach. Of course, I'll stay, I said without hesitation. The cruise isn't important if Grandma needs help. Those words would haunt me just hours later. My name is Tara Smith, and I'm 28 years old. I've spent my life being the responsible one, the daughter my parents could rely on when things got tough. But my dedication to family was about to be tested in ways I never could have imagined. For months, I had looked forward to this cruise, our first real vacation in years. I'd taken time off work, saved every spare dollar, even splurged on a few new outfits. But when Mom called, claiming Grandma was in the hospital, I didn't think twice. I canceled my trip without hesitation. That evening, as I drove to the hospital, my phone buzzed. A notification from Emma. I glanced at the screen, and my breath caught in my throat. There, filling my phone with bright, cheerful colors, was a photo of my entire family, Mom, Dad, Emma, my aunts and uncles, all standing on the cruise ship's deck, champagne glasses raised in a toast. Best vacation ever. So blessed to have such an amazing family. #CruiseLife #FamilyTime. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. The world around me blurred as realization crashed down like a tidal wave. They had lied to me. They had deliberately excluded me from the family trip, using my grandmother, the person I loved most, as an excuse. By the time I reached the hospital, my worst fears were confirmed. There was no record of my grandmother being admitted. My calls to my parents went straight to voicemail. Emma had blocked me on social media within minutes of my seeing her post. The betrayal was a physical ache, a punch to the gut that left me breathless. Fighting back tears, I drove to Grandma's house. Her lights were on. When she opened the door, looking perfectly fine, confusion flickered across her face. "Tara, sweetheart, what's wrong?" she asked, pulling me into a warm hug. The scent of lavender, so familiar, so comforting, made my chest tighten. We sat in her cozy living room, and the words tumbled out of me, the phone call, the cruise, the lies, the photo that had shattered everything. Why would they do this? I whispered, wiping my damp cheeks. Why lie about you being sick? Grandma's expression darkened. Your mother called me last week, she admitted, anger lacing her voice. She wanted me to go along with the lie if you came by. I refused. But I had no idea they'd actually go through with it. The cruise hadn't been cheap, nearly $2,000 per person. I had worked overtime for months to afford my share. Now, I couldn't shake the sinking suspicion that my ticket money had funded someone else's cabin. You know what hurts the most? I murmured. They didn't even need an elaborate excuse. They could have just told me they didn't want me there. Instead, they used you, knowing how much I care about you, to manipulate me. Grandma reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly firm. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are, even when they think they're hiding it, she said. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? I looked up at her, searching for answers in her wise, unwavering eyes. My phone buzzed again, a group message from my cousin, Nia. She had meant to send vacation photos to everyone, unaware that I wasn't supposed to see them. Dread curled in my stomach as I scrolled through the images. Emma, wearing the sundress I had helped her pick out. My parents, lounging by the pool with cocktails in hand. The whole family gathered for a formal dinner, laughing like nothing was amiss. But then my gaze snagged on something else. A glint of diamonds around my mother's neck. My grandmother's necklace. The heirloom meant to be passed down to both Emma and me when we turned 30. She gave it to Emma already, didn't she? I asked, my voice hollow. Grandma's lips pressed into a thin line. That necklace has been in our family for 3 generations, she said quietly. Your great-grandmother divided her jewelry equally between her daughters. That's why I gave it to your mother with specific instructions. Then she told me something that sent ice through my veins. The cruise hadn't been paid for with my parents' money at all. 2 months ago, Grandma had given them $15,000 for a vacation meant for all of us. Instead, they had taken my portion and used it to upgrade their own experience. I've been watching, Grandma continued, her voice thick with disappointment. For years, I've seen how they treat you. I kept hoping they'd change. But this? This is the final straw. She stood, walked to her desk, and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I wasn't going to show you this yet, she said, but you need to know. I've been keeping records, every time they favored Emma, every time they took advantage of your kindness, every penny. I swallowed hard as she handed me the envelope, its weight heavy in my hands. It was time to face the truth. And it was time to decide what I was going to do about it. They've spent differently between you two. Grandma's voice was steady, but the weight of her words settled heavily in the room. Inside the envelope she'd handed me were years of evidence, bank statements, photos, emails, and handwritten notes. My hands trembled as I sifted through them. The truth unfolded before me in black and white. The favoritism wasn't just imagined. It had been calculated, consistent, deliberate. But why? I whispered, my voice breaking. Why did they always make me feel like I was imagining it? Grandma's eyes hardened with a determination I hadn't seen before. She leaned forward, speaking with a conviction that pulled me back from the edge of despair. Because that's what people do when they know they're wrong, she said. They try to make you doubt yourself, but not anymore, Tara, not anymore. The weight of it all hung heavy, but I knew, this was just the beginning. The next morning, while I sat in my Indianapolis apartment going over Grandma's documentation, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Emma. Emma, Mom said you're spreading lies about us. Why can't you just be happy for once instead of trying to ruin everything? I stared at the message, a slow burn of anger rising within me. They were still trying to paint me as the villain, even now, after everything they'd done. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. Instead of replying to Emma, I did something I'd never dared before. I posted the truth on social media. Funny how being lied to about my grandmother being hospitalized, just so my family could exclude me from a vacation, somehow makes me the problem. I attached Emma's best vacation ever photo. Even funnier how the cruise was paid for with money that was meant to include me. The moment I hit post, my phone flooded with reactions. Family friends who'd known us for years were shocked, questioning my parents' actions. My cousins, who hadn't known the full story, began reaching out privately, sharing their own experiences of how I'd always been treated differently. Then my phone rang. It was my father. I almost didn't answer, but Grandma's voice echoed in my mind, "Stand your ground. You've done nothing wrong. Take down that post immediately," my father commanded, his voice icy. "You're embarrassing this family." I leaned forward, my grip tightening on the phone. "No, Dad," I shot back. "You embarrassed this family when you lied about Grandma being sick, when you took her money meant for all of us, and used it to exclude me. That's not how it happened," he argued, his tone defensive. "We needed a break from your constant." "My constant what, Dad?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "My constant reliability, my constant help with Grandma, my constant effort to be part of this family despite how you treat me." The line fell silent, and for a moment, I thought the call had dropped, but then he spoke again, his voice now laced with threat. "If you don't take down that post and apologize publicly for your lies, you'll regret it. You have no idea what's at stake here." "Are you threatening me?" I demanded. "I'm warning you," he replied coldly. "Your mother and I have protected you all these years, kept certain things from you. If you want to play this game, fine, but remember, you're not the only one who can tell stories." The call ended, leaving me shaken, a chill creeping through me. What were they protecting me from? What stories could they tell? I called Grandma immediately, my voice tight with fear and confusion. "They're trying to scare me," I said. "Dad says they've been protecting me from something, but they won't say what." There was a long pause before Grandma spoke, her voice steady as ever. "Go to your email," she instructed. "I'm sending you something. It's time you knew everything." I opened my laptop, hands trembling as I checked my inbox. I clicked on the message, bracing myself for whatever was inside. What I found would change everything. The email contained a scan of a document from 25 years ago, a trust agreement that took my breath away. My maternal grandfather had left behind a significant fortune, meant to be divided equally between all his grandchildren when they turned 30. The trust was worth over $2 million. But that wasn't the worst part. A series of bank statements followed, each one showing withdrawals from the trust, money used for Emma's dance lessons, her private school education, her college tuition, and even her wedding. And it had all been taken from what was supposed to be my share. "They've been stealing from you since you were 3 years old," Grandma's voice crackled in my ear. "Your mother convinced the trustee, her brother, Michael, to give her early access to your portion, claiming it was for your benefit. But as you can see," I whispered, my voice hollow, "they spent it all on Emma." The numbers were staggering. Over $500,000 had been siphoned from my trust fund, while I worked multiple jobs to pay for my college education. Then, another email arrived, this time from my Uncle Michael. "Michael, Tara, I can't keep quiet anymore. What they did with the cruise money was the last straw. I've attached documentation of every withdrawal they made from your trust. I'm so sorry, I should have stopped them years ago." I clicked on the attachment, my heart pounding as I sifted through the files. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. My parents hadn't just spent my trust fund on Emma, they'd been embezzling money for themselves too. The cruise had been just the latest example of their scheme. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked Grandma, my mind reeling. "I only discovered the extent of it recently," she replied. "When I confronted your mother about it last month, she swore they'd pay it all back. That's when I gave them the cruise money." It was a test, I realized. "Yes," Grandma confirmed. "I wanted to see if they'd finally do the right thing. And they failed spectacularly," I said bitterly. "Yes," Grandma agreed, "but their failure has given us exactly what we needed, proof. Your Uncle Michael has agreed to testify about their manipulation of the trust, combined with my documentation and the cruise incident. We can take legal action," I finished, a fierce determination replacing my shock. "Better than that," Grandma's voice was sharp, confident. "We can make sure they never hurt you again. Check the second attachment in my email." I clicked it open and gasped. There it was, Grandma's will, freshly updated. My eyes darted across the document, locking onto the part that made my heart race. She had made me the sole heir to her estate, and I now held controlling interest in the family company, the company where my father worked as CEO. "They're about to discover," Grandma's voice was firm, a quiet fury underlying her words, "that their actions have consequences." The next morning, I met Uncle Michael at a cafe in downtown Indianapolis. He looked worn down, the dark circles under his eyes betraying sleepless nights. He handed me a thick folder, his hands trembling as he did. "These are copies of every document, every transaction," he said in a hushed voice. "I've already sent everything to the family attorney. Your parents, they're going to try to fight this. They've called me 6 times since I sent that email." "What are they saying?" I asked, flipping through the damning evidence. "They're claiming it was all for your benefit, that they were protecting you from too much money too young." Uncle Michael shook his head, disgust flashing in his eyes. "But I found something else, something they don't know I know about." He pulled out another document, its contents sending a chill through me, a series of recent transfers to an offshore account. "They're planning to leave the country, Tara," he said gravely. "The cruise wasn't just a vacation, it was a test run. They were checking if their passports would raise any red flags." My blood ran cold. "They're planning to run with what's left of my trust fund," I whispered, disbelief seizing me. "Yes, and Emma's involved." His face hardened. "She's been helping them set up accounts in her name to hide the money." My phone buzzed, cutting through the tension. A text from Emma. "Emma, I know what you're doing. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're trying to ruin everything. Well, guess what? You're too late. By the time you figure it out, we'll be gone, and you'll have nothing." I showed the message to Uncle Michael, his face drained of color. "They're moving faster than I thought," he muttered. "We need to act now." I called Grandma immediately. She picked up on the first ring, her voice calm but urgent. "They're at the family company right now," she said. "Your father's cleaning out his office. Security just called me." "Can they stop him?" "Better. I've already contacted the police and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They're on their way. But, Tara," she paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, "you need to get down there. You're the controlling shareholder now. The paperwork was filed first thing this morning." I froze for a moment, the realization hitting me like a freight train. "They don't know that yet, do they?" "No, and that's our advantage. Get there before they can destroy any evidence. Uncle Michael's documents prove the theft, but there may be more we don't know about. My heart pounded in my chest as I grabbed my keys and rushed to my car. Another text came through, this one from my mother. Mom, you ungrateful child, after everything we've done for you, you'll regret this. But this time, their words didn't have the same power. I wasn't scared anymore. I had the truth, I had the documents, and, most of all, I had nothing left to lose. I arrived at the family company's headquarters just as my parents were walking out, carrying boxes from my father's office. Emma was with them, her eyes darting around nervously. They froze when they saw me step out of my car. What are you doing here? My father demanded, trying to project authority, but his eyes betrayed the panic creeping in. Funny, I replied calmly. I was about to ask you the same thing, especially since you're removing items from my company without authorization. Emma scoffed. Your company? What are you talking about? I held up my phone, displaying the ownership documents. Grandma transferred her controlling shares to me this morning, and as the new majority shareholder, I'm very interested in those boxes you're carrying. Would they happen to contain evidence of what you did with my trust fund? My mother's face went white as a sheet. Behind them, police cars screeched to a halt, lights flashing, FBI agents piled out of unmarked vehicles. Uncle Michael's car pulled up right after, with Grandma in the passenger seat. You don't understand, my mother pleaded, voice shaking. Everything we did was for this family. No, I corrected her, my voice steady but fierce. Everything you did was for Emma, and now, you were planning to run away with what's left of my money. I turned to Emma, my eyes locking on hers. Did you enjoy the cruise, Emma? I asked, a quiet venom in my voice. Was it worth it? Emma's composure shattered, and she burst into tears. My father tried to pull her away, but it was too late. The truth had caught up with them. 3 months later, I sat in Grandma's garden, sipping my morning coffee as the autumn leaves drifted lazily to the ground. The peaceful scene was a stark contrast to everything that had happened. The FBI's investigation had uncovered more than we could have imagined. My parents had embezzled from the company too. They now faced federal charges and civil lawsuits from shareholders. Emma had struck a deal with prosecutors, agreeing to testify in exchange for immunity. She had moved to Minnesota, forced to fend for herself without the financial crutch of our parents. Her last message to me had been an apology, long and heartfelt, but some wounds run too deep for words to heal. You know, Grandma said, sipping her coffee, your grandfather would be proud of how you handled everything. He always said money reveals people's true character. I nodded, taking in the changes I'd made to the company. Under my leadership, we had established a scholarship program for employees' children and a more transparent financial system. The business was thriving, not on deception, but on integrity. I never wanted any of this, I admitted softly. I just wanted to be treated fairly. Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. Sometimes, life's greatest blessings come disguised as its greatest challenges, she said, her voice warm with wisdom. You've turned their betrayal into something positive. She was right. I had found my strength, my purpose, and my self-worth. And the cruise they took without me? It hadn't been the vacation of a lifetime after all. It had been the beginning of their downfall, and the start of my new life.